Hey everyone, this is Monte. I wanted to record a vlog over what happened today when I made some comments on the LCS cast. First off, I want to apologize about the way I handled it on Twitter. I don't regret making a comment about the issue, but I definitely should have phrased things better. And I'm not trying to throw gasoline on the fire or anything and try and blow this more out of proportion. But I think what I realized with a lot of the comments and a lot of the firestorm that happened today was that people don't really understand the function of casting or exactly what is and is not appropriate and when things are appropriate and when they're not. Obviously, there's a lot of room for debate on this, but I just wanted to share my thoughts and kind of get it out there because I don't think a lot of people know what is expected of casters in different situations. And so we'll talk about some traditional sports examples and how they relate to broadcasting in eSports and different segments surrounding the shows. So I was frustrated because there was a comment from one of the LCS casters today during the match, the promotion match between Dignitas and TDK, where my team Renegades was referred to as, if TDK wins this next game, then they're going to have to play Relegades, like cut to break. And obviously, I don't appreciate that. I have an obligation as a team owner to defend my brand. And when I poorly, admittedly, called this out on Twitter and was pretty upset by it, a lot of people started saying, well, you talk shit about teams all the time, Monte Cristo. What's wrong with you? You can dish it out, but you can't take it. I can take it just fine. It's just a matter of the context in which these kind of lines are uttered. And your obligation as a caster changes dramatically depending on the situation that you're in. And remember that with casting, you have to consider both the audience to which you are speaking and also the purpose of what you're doing on camera. And there became this whole argument with people saying, yeah, you do this all the time. People like linking me pieces of shows or the analyst desk where I say a team is bad or something like that. And there's a big difference, though, between what you do on broadcast and what you would do on an analyst desk or a podcast or a show that's designed to have banter and designed to be a pundit. So when we look at some of these examples, first off, if they had called my team Relegades on PTL, I really wouldn't have cared that much. Like, that's the forum to do that. That's the forum to have the strong opinions, to have the banter in, to discuss the strength of teams, to make jokes. And in fact, this sort of happened earlier in PTL. A lot of you might remember the terrible game where my team played terribly, and I can say that, where we beat Dignitas, but there was that just god-awful early game where we died to the Rift Herald and Dignitas died to the turret. So what PTL did this next week was they presented the following graphic. So you take a look at it. Look at that! Rift Herald and Bot Lane Tower are above Dignitas and Renegades in the power ranking standings. I was watching PTL live at the time. I thought this was funny. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that there was a setup to this joke. I really couldn't argue with it. I had a giggle, and I moved on with my life. Many of you who have watched Summoning Insight, my show, knows that Thorn makes fun of me about my team. Even on the Korean broadcast on Champions, my co-casters have made fun of me about the team's record. I don't have a problem with this, right? I think it should be contained to these kind of shows. And if we think about that, there are lots of shows, First Take, what Colin Cowherd does, Inside the NBA, where Shaq and Charles Barkley really banter back and forth. And they do that because that is the time to really dig into teams, to have these discussions. And it also has to be entertaining. It has to be funny. So when you're on the analyst desk for something or you're creating one of these shows, you have to remember that as a caster, your primary job is to entertain people. And people with strong opinions talking together are inherently entertaining, especially if they can crack jokes, which is what I do when I'm on an analyst desk, because my job is to keep you entertained between games. The camera's on us. Sure, we cut to analysis and we try and do our best to analyze the games and everything like that. But at the end of the day, the focus is just entirely different. The focus of an analyst desk segment or one of these podcasts or one of the shows is on the host, the casters being entertaining, because there is nothing else to entertain you besides a few clips here or there. Now, this changes dramatically when we have a cast. No one would ever say that a cast game of the NBA, a sportscaster, is even in the same field as perhaps a the inside the NBA. They're two very different genres of entertainment. And casting a game is very serious because you have an obligation to represent the teams well. And people like to say, okay, well, you make comments about the LPL or the LCS on the Korean broadcast. And yeah, we do have throwaway jokes sometimes, but I don't refer to teams as free SM or free LG. Any of these kind of like throwaway one shot like cheap jokes. And I certainly would never do that in a tournament in which these teams are playing and I am casting. Like, that's the big difference. At international tournaments, it is our job, and in any tournament, it's a caster's job to be objective. And it's our job to help tell the storyline and explain what's going on within the games and tie that to past performance, possible future performance, problems that the team has. But you are not the one who should be making a lot of very severe judgments or having these very strong opinions like a team is bad, right? And I try and avoid that as much as I can. And casters learn how to do this because you can say, that was a poor play, but you're not just going to straight up say, like, I don't say, even though I can tell you right now, I don't think Spenu is a good League of Legends team, or Kongdu Monster, these are teams that I cast. I don't just straight up call them terrible during a broadcast. I may say they're playing very poorly or that was a terrible play, but you have an obligation to at least represent these teams as serious competitors in the league. And I think like that's what really got me about this, is that it's the equivalent of, for example, things like you couldn't say in an NBA broadcast. If they want to say inside the NBA that the LA Lakers are bad and they're having a bad season, you can have that discussion. You can say they're awful. You can say their play has been abysmal. And then you can have an argument about that and you can really like sink into it, get to an analytical point, and it creates these strong opinions create entertainment and keep people interested in the show that's at hand. Now, you take it the other way, and there's something that happens at the end of a Golden State Warriors game, and the last thing you hear is a commentator say, and next up, the Golden State Warriors are going to play the LA Losers. Thanks, folks. Bye. People would go apeshit over that because it's a non sequitur. It has nothing to do with what you've previously been talking about. And that's like, for me, that's where it really like crosses the border of professionalism. What people do in shows that are based around having strong opinions, that are based around banter, is one thing because it's a different format and it's a different job. When you're trying to be objective within the scope of a given game as a caster, that's our duty. And it's not the time to like shit all over teams. There are other times to shit all over teams, and that's fun in and of itself. So I think what people have to understand is that there's just a hugely different role between these two things. And taking these things out of context isn't good. Now, that said, I do believe what was said today was a genuine mistake. And I don't want you to jump all over people or start some sort of crazy new pitchfork mob about this. I just want to make sure that people understand that we are using the traditional roles of sports broadcasting, whether that's a caster or whether that's more of a pundit or an entertainer. And so we tend to cross roles more than most other sports do, because you'll see many of your casters on analyst desks, or you'll see people on different shows like PTL, and then they go on to the LCS broadcasts. And it's okay for them to do things like say that Renegades is below in power rankings the Rift Herald, and that's funny, and also maybe true at the time. But when you start like really like ripping into teams, or even just creating these names that are memes spawned out of Twitch chat, because that actually does really hurt the brand and the way that people view the team. And that's, like I said, taking it out of context into something where people know that's the arena, but when you introduce the team as a joke itself, it sort of makes the entire competition a joke and the league a joke. And that's not your job. Your job is to represent the league and the competition as being highly competitive and as being what the best that these teams can do, whether or not they have the talent to be a top team or not. And so it really is just a disservice to the league and to the teams that participate in it to reduce the level of a team to that of just a one-line joke. And I don't think that's okay for professional broadcasters. So I'm just saying there's a time and place for all of this. I hope that this little vlog clears up some of the my thoughts about this and the different roles and the different hats I have to wear as a broadcaster, which does lead to, you'll see me hamming it up more, being more of an entertainer in some cases, but also dialing it back and really trying to be objective. And that's the balance beam that every caster right now in esports is trying to walk, because we do have to fill multiple roles. We're not at the point yet really where we have truly dedicated pundits. Maybe Thorin is one, right? Because he doesn't really cast. He does shows with me on League of Legends, he does shows on Counter-Strike, and he sits on the analyst desk. So guys like Thorin and Richard Lewis are kind of like carving out their niche as just being these pundits where they are expected to be entertaining and they're not expected to be objective. And I think that may be one of the things in which esports will grow into in the next couple of years, is really more firmly delineating those roles. But for now, this is what we've got. And so this isn't obviously just about me. Whenever anybody is going to be in this situation, because we're all basically going to be in this situation that I found myself in right now. And I would just encourage you to think more about what people are trying to do and how they're trying to portray themselves and entertain you before there's a giant just explosion, accusations of unprofessionalism or hypocrisy. And this goes too for this whole ordeal. Like, I don't think it was intentional. I do think it was a mistake, but that's where my frustration with this was born from. And also, I think the problem with how fans view broadcast talent who are forced to do multiple roles that may at times seem conflicting. So anyway, I hope that clears up some of it and helps you guys get a little bit more perspective on what casters' jobs are and what we're expected to do. And I'll do some VOD reviews and stuff a little bit later this week. So thanks for watching.